Hey, welcome to Getting Real. I'm your host, Monick Halm. What do you think of the music? I just had this on AI, testing out different theme songs. So, yeah, about yay or nay, and what you think, and a different ones. But anyway, I'm having fun, which is what this is, life's about. Um, Today, on today's show, we're going to be talking about um, mistakes. So this is, on this show, this is we get real. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, um, the real, the raw, no fluff, no fillers, just what has happened. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes we make mistakes, and you learn. So today I'm going to share about five of the biggest mistakes that I made when I got started, what I learned, and what to do instead. Um, because I think that when you can take the lessons and you can get that feedback, you can make it into a win. Then you can win. They say that smart people learn from their mistakes. Geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. So be a genius and learn from my mistakes, and hopefully you can avoid making those. Um, and also it's important to remember that, as Mel Robbins has said, your mistakes don't define you. It's what you do next that does. So I want you to know, if you find yourself having made one or more of these mistakes, what you can do next. So let's get into it. Mistake number one. This was what I did. Think back. So I got into real estate totally by accident, just as a way to buy a house. The only thing I'd ever been taught about real estate investing, or real estate, not even about investing, was that at some point you buy a house to live in. That was it. I mean, no, I had no models for buying rentals and cash flowing properties. That was just not something that my family did. We were we You would buy the house that you lived in if you could. Otherwise, you would rent. But I was taught, you get a job, you work until you can buy that house. So I got a job. I was working as a lawyer. I was working, and then I thought, okay, well, I guess it's time to buy that house. And I live in Los Angeles, which is super expensive. And the way I ended up being able to buy a house was to buy a house with more than one unit, live in one, rent out the others, where the tenants were subsidizing my rent. So that's how I managed to do that. But even though I was a landlord for a few years, it wasn't until after I met my husband and he had a duplex. Then after the market crash, we started to flip. That's really when we started to be investors, right? That's really when we started to play this game of real estate as a way to make money, other than just as a way to have a house to live in. And so the mistake that I made, that first mistake, was thinking that HGTV was education. I really thought I knew what I was doing because I was obsessed with HGTV, and I'd watch tons of hours of Flip and Flop, or those, like, those renovation shows. Like, I thought that was real. And I should have known better. I mean, I didn't think it was real, but I thought that's what real estate investing is, whatever I was seeing on those shows. You'd buy a house, you'd fix it up, you'd flip it. And and I was wrong. Plus I'd done some redecorating ourselves, or we'd done some work in our own houses. And I thought, well, okay, well, I can, we can work with a contractor. That's what real estate investing is. This flipping thing that I saw on HGTV. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no really didn't know how to analyze the deals. I didn't know how to calculate return on investment. I didn't know how to choose a market that made sense. I didn't know that you could choose a market outside of where you lived. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know. I mean, I could fill a library with what I did not know about what I was doing. And that cost us a lot. It cost us, I mean, luckily, we got in, we started around 2010, and that was at a time when houses were on sale. Okay, it was after the market crash. Houses were cheap and they were rising. The interest rates were so low, even though we mostly were not borrowing, we were doing all cash because, again, I did not know what I did not know. But it was a very relatively forgiving market. Um, but I still made so many mistakes, and those mistakes from thinking that HGTV was education versus, getting a real education would are much more expensive today. Right? Luckily, I made that mistake 15 years ago. God, I can't believe that's been 15 years. Jesus. But I made that mistake then, right? When it was a lot less painful. Now, with interest rates being higher, property prices being much higher, um, that mistake is going to cost you more. So, what do you do instead? Right? You need to get real education, not just entertainment. You want to learn how to run the numbers. You want to learn um, strategies, exit strategies, how to build skills that make you money, not just how to make things pretty. And, you know, really being in tune with, what is your outcome and how getting that education so you can take effective action and avoid mistakes. And the HGTV or the University of Google, not the best way to do that. But yeah, even the University of Google was a better teacher than HGTV, which was what I tried to do. Um, Luckily, we lived to tell the tale, but that was a huge mistake. Okay, mistake number two. Um, Believing I could only invest with my own money and credit, my own capital and credit. At the beginning, I was playing small because I thought I had to. I thought I had to. Um, I believed that I was limited to the amount of cash I had in the bank and the credit I could borrow. And the credit I could borrow was not that high, because at the time, I was not a W-2 employee and neither was my husband. So we that when the banks were looking at our debt to income ratio, we were not showing a lot of income. We had enough cash in the bank account to buy houses outright. But the banks wouldn't give us a loan on that house, even though we could have bought it on, we ended up having to buy it outright. Not having to, we didn't know what we didn't know. At the time, didn't know that there was something called hard money lending. I didn't know that there were options outside of a conventional bank. There are a lot of I didn't know that there was this thing called seller financing. I didn't know that we could get investors. I just knew that we had you could use your money in the bank or you could get a conventional bank loan. And that was it, right? Those were the only things I knew I could do. And that was so limiting to me. And so during those years when that was all we had, or we thought we had access to, that kept us really small. That kept us really small and stuck. So it wasn't until um, I happened to meet the guy who would become one of my mentors, Robert Helms, and I met him and we were at dinner and he was talking about what we were up to. And I was telling him how I was trying to get a fourplex in LA, but I couldn't afford it. It was so expensive. And he said, you know, first he said, LA is really expensive. So, well, that's like mistake number three, which was thinking I had to invest in my own backyard. Mistake number three was like, I live in LA. You think I thought you had to invest where you could ride to your property, drive to it, touch it, self-manage it. I didn't realize that you could invest outside of where you lived. So I'll share these two mistakes at the same time because they were both like they both shifted for me at the same time in the same conversation. Mistake one was, the second mistake was thinking that I was limiting to my own capital and credit. The third mistake was thinking that I had to invest where I lived. And this one conversation showed me where I was mistaken. Robert Helms said, LA is a really expensive market. He said, live where you want to live, invest where the numbers make sense. And I went, oh, like that's possible? I didn't realize that was possible. I mean, in hindsight, it's obvious, but at the time, I just had this assumption that I had to invest where I lived. And the other thing about that was where the numbers make sense. Until he said that, and this goes back to that first point, I didn't know really how to make sense of the numbers, right? I didn't know how you did that, or even that there were places where numbers would make more sense. So learning all of that was a huge game changer for me, changed everything. So that mistake, you can only invest in your backyard. What you do instead is you invest where the numbers make sense. If that happens to be where you live, fabulous, fantastic. It's easier when you can invest where you live. But if you live at some place that's very expensive, very tenant friendly, not landlord friendly, hard to find properties, just tough, then you invest where the numbers make sense. So that's mistake number three and the antidote to that. Now, mistake two was thinking I was limited to my own capital and credit. And at that time, he said to me, what you could do is you could bring a group of investors together and you could purchase a 100 or 200 unit apartment building. And that totally blew my mind. I was like, what? That's possible? I had no idea that was possible. And that, just learning that, allowed us to have a quantum leap. It allowed us to really, we went from 2 doors to over 1,000 doors in 1 year by using that skill of bringing in investors, learning how to raise capital, learning how to use other people's money. And not just that, but then we learned all these other strategies, seller financing, and different types of lenders, right? So we weren't limited to conventional bank lending. So when I learned all of these different ways to fund and finance our purchases, in one of my workshops, I share 21 different ways to finance a deal, only one of which is using your own money. So there are so many other options, but thinking that you are limited to your own capital and credit, that is a mistake. All right. So mistake number one, trying to learn from the school of HGTV. That was a big mistake. Mistake number two, believing I could only invest with my own capital and credit. Mistake number three was only investing in my backyard, my very expensive Los Angeles backyard. And mistake number 4 was not going after cash flow, just thinking about appreciation. Honestly, if I'm gonna be really honest, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I wasn't thinking about either. I wasn't thinking about how this makes money. Originally, I just got in so I could have a house. And then later, I was thinking only in terms of flipping, like bringing, increasing the equity, appreciating, making the property more valuable, selling it, taking the money. I did not think about cash flow. And so while for my buy and hold properties that I had in Los Angeles for years, I did not make a cent. I had no profit. There was no cash flow, none, and negative cash flow. I was subsidizing my tenants. I was paying for them to be able to live because and I had appreciation, I had equity. And actually for a long time after the market crash, I wasn't not only was I not cash flowing, I had negative equity underwater. So it was bad in all respects, right? In that way. And when I was able to switch to look for and invest for cash flow instead, which did require me to invest outside of Los Angeles, mostly outside of California, um, that changed the game, right? Cash flow is the name. That's the path to freedom. That's the path to financial freedom because the financial freedom, as I define it, is when your passive income equals or exceeds your expenses. At that point, you're working because you want to, not because you have to. That is freedom. That is the game we want to play. But I did not know that that was the game to play. I was playing the wrong game. And so the mistake is to not go for cash flow. And what if you do acquire property and it's cash flowing, the value of it can go up and down. It doesn't matter until you need to sell, right? You can, as long as every month you're getting that rent and the rent covers your expenses, and then there's extra, and that extra goes into your pocket, or that extra goes to buy more properties, all right, which is really when it gets so juicy, right? That's how you build wealth. That's the game you want to play. And my big mistake was not playing that game. My big mistake was just looking at appreciation. And appreciation is tough because appreciation does not pay the bills. And so for some people that might work, especially if you're buying something that's just you're buying it through your retirement account, self-directed retirement account. It's not something you're going to see for years. Then appreciation is fine. But for most people, the game that we want to play is cash flow. That's the name of the game. That's the path to freedom. So mistake is to chase appreciation, not cash flow. And the antidote to that, cash flow. That's the queen. All right. So mistake number 5, trying to do it alone. This was the one that really almost broke me because, my husband and I were we were trying to figure things out one one big mistake at a time. We were bumbling through, no roadmap. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't have mentorship. We didn't have community. We just had ourselves and the very poor teacher of HGTV. And, it's bad when you know what you don't know. It's really terrible when you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know what you're missing. And there was so much that I had no idea that I didn't even know that, right? I had all of these mistaken I had these myths that were driving my decisions, like, "Oh, I have to invest in LA. I have to just use my own cash, or if I can't get a bank loan, I have to," I had all of these limiting beliefs. And because we were doing it by ourselves, we just had nobody to help disabuse us of those limiting beliefs. So it totally changed the game for us when we started to seek out education, when we started to get community, when we started to be around other investors, when we started to learn what was working by people that were actually doing it, and then modeling that success, doing that ourselves. And real estate, and then, but what I found was that this community of investors that we were in was pretty much all men. We got into this high-end real estate mastermind, and there were 19 men and me. And Real Estate Investor Goddesses was created so I could be in community with women that were doing this. And that's what cr- that was what drove that back in 2016. I was looking around, and I remember trying to find a community of women that were in real estate. And I went to a crew event, and crew is commercial real estate women. And I was like, great, my people. So I go to this crew event. It's in downtown LA in this big skyscraper. I get in there, and I'm talking to all these women. Hey, what do you do? And they were all vendors, right? There was, there was one that was an agent, one that did insurance, one that helped like sold carpets, one that did like property management. Was it like they were all like not one of them were owners. Not one. I was the only one that was there that was in ownership. And I guess it's not surprising because they've found that in commercial real estate in particular, only 2% of women, 2% of owners are women. 98% are men when you're talking about commercial real estate. So I went to this commercial real estate women, and I was the only owner. And I've been to a bunch of other, sometimes I'll go to these large multifamily conferences and I'll speak, and again, we'll be in a group of women, and they're like, yeah, maybe definitely less than 10% of the room is all of the females there are in the ownership. So I'm really determined to change that. And that was what creating Real Estate Investor Goddesses was all about, having this community of women that were playing this game of investing in real estate, of owning. I think it's so important that we women are on the ownership side. And it's not just because of that. I think that it's important that we are financially empowered. And I do think it is super important that women are financially empowered. But also, we play the game differently. One of my goddesses had gone to a multifamily training, and I won't say whose training it was, but she was really dismayed afterwards because she was like, "Oh, do we have to invest in such a way that we're like kicking people out of their homes? The point is you fix it up, you jack up the rent, you're kicking poor families out." And it's like, no. No, that's not the point. That's not how we do it. We want to invest in a way where we can leave our properties and our communities better than we found them. It's not about getting every dollar out of a deal. And it's definitely not about being a slumlord. And I think that the feminine who comes in caring about the people that are the beneficiaries or the users of our real estate, I think it's really important that we have more women in these roles. So, not that all men are bad. I'm not a man hater at all. Just that I think that we need more women represented. And so we need that community. And that for us, for me, that was the antidote because that mistake, number 5, was trying to do it alone. And when I was able to do it in community, I really was able to skyrocket and jump. So, yeah, everything changed when I stopped trying to do it alone. Everything changed. We got real education when which was mistake number 1. Everything changed when we realized we were not limited to our own capital and credit, and we could quantum leap when we started to tap into OPM, partner with other people to help their money make money. Um, when we got over mistake number 3 and realized that we did not have to invest in our own backyard and we could, like, the world was our oyster. When we were able, we started to play the game of getting cash flow, not just appreciation. So those are the mistakes that I made that really almost broke me. Luckily, we lived to tell the tale and we survived. And now, hopefully, you can learn from our mistakes and not do the same. Okay, so now we're going to end with a trinity, which is a brag, gratitude, and a desire. But before we do, if you are wanting that community, that education, that support, so that you can invest for cash flow, maybe outside of where you live, uh, I do invite you to check out our Real Estate Investor Goddesses Millionaire Real Estate Investor Goddess program. And so if you just go to our reigoddesses.com website under programs and apply there, get on a call with one of our team and see if this is a path to help you avoid those mistakes and to do this in sisterhood. All right, so now time for our trinity. Brag. And I would love it if you would share a trinity in the comments, and which is a brag, a gratitude, and a desire. So brag. I brag that I learned from my mistakes and that I have not let them stop me. And I wish I could say those 5 mistakes were the only mistakes I made. I have definitely made way more since, and I hope that I have learned from them, and I continue to learn from them, and then I've also taken those mistakes and taught them to my goddesses so that they hopefully can avoid those mistakes that I've made, and hopefully you can too. But I'm proud of them that I made those mistakes and I did not let those mistakes stop me and keep me out of the game, because I will not lie, there have been times when I was like, I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to figure this out. And so I brag that, and I'm proud of that. I am grateful. I am so grateful for every mentor, every person that I've learned from, and all of the people that are in community with me, the goddesses, my friends. I'm so grateful that I'm not doing this alone, and I'm so grateful and so excited for the incredible people, especially the incredible women I get to play this game with. So I'm grateful for that, and I desire way more women owning real estate. Way more. We need to have our voices heard. We need to own our piece of the earth. We do. We do. We do. We do. So that's what I desire. I desire all of you to own tons of real estate, and and go out there doing good for the properties, for the communities in which your real estate is located. Um, so that's it. Thanks for getting real with me today. I I love y'all. And if you found this valuable, I'm going to ask you to please share it with somebody who needs to hear this, somebody who's getting started in real estate and they don't know what they don't know and need to hear about these mistakes. All right, so please share it with them. And if somebody shared this with you, thank them because they love you and that was really kind of them and they want the best for you. So um, that's it. Thanks for getting real with me today. Let's get real, stay real, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.